your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell at before you blow up a plane.
Basha K. Ali!
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what, Chrissie, to say I dabbled in stand-up is something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt. I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. You can listen to this show on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin, Twitter, Twitch. We're all over the place. Before I bring in our fabulous and very interesting guest today, I have a couple of stand-up comedy gigs to promote. 1 week from today, next Thursday, January 25th, I will be back in Dallas, Texas, headlining the Hyenas Comedy Club. That is next Thursday. The show's going to be 8:30, not 8 o'clock. It's going to be great. I will be joined by my very good friends and hilarious comedians, Lila Hart and Keanu Thompson. I can't promise another viral heckler moment, but who knows? If you want to come, just to heckle me, I welcome that. It's always a good time. Then I'm headlining in Morris Plains, New Jersey next month, February 24th on a Saturday, 8:30 show at Tiff's Ale House, also known as the Dojo of Comedy. Keanu Thompson will be featuring on that show as well. Get your tickets at ChrissieMayr.com. And then they won't let me fly anymore. Because apparently the flight attendants, they don't want to deal with birth. How's that for customer service? I know, right? It's crazy. But yes, come on out. I'm very excited. I can't. I'm going to try to find something to squeeze into for these shows because every day, just it's something new does not fit. Hooray! The joys of creating a life. Okay, y'all. I am so excited to have this girl on the show today. She just came off of a really wonderful interview with Allie Beth Stuckey over at The Blaze. She is a journalist at Sound Investigations. She's an undercover. She just did an undercover investigation into Pornhub that we're going to get into. But I'm so excited that she's here today. Arden Young, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chrissie. Thank you so much for having me.
You have been a busy girl in the last month since this investigation came out.
Yeah, it's been super busy, which is good. Busy's good.
I have so much that I want to talk to you about because I think what you discovered is just so. It was kind of just so insanely groundbreaking. So for those of you who are not familiar, I guess about exactly a month ago, Arden did what I like to call Project Veritas style undercover. I've always been enthralled and intrigued by the women who go on dates with guys and get them to admit stuff that they maybe shouldn't just be telling someone they're on a first or second date with. But I believe all human beings, they want to be honest ultimately and get things off their chest. And when people need to vent and talk about stuff, yes, it will come out on a first date, on a second date. So Arden did some undercover dating research. And this is just so interesting. And the things that you were able to discover, you ended up going on a couple of dates with the content manager from Pornhub, basically, technical product manager.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I can't even describe how shocked I was. Notably. Oh, I'll let you play that.
Well, I'll play a little snippet, Harry.
I've been told. For sure.
I mean, 180 million unique visitors a day is a lot. Even like Jordan Peterson, I know like he says like there's not many studies on it. There's not a lot of like, we don't really know the implications of it. That can't be normal. That can't be healthy. That can't be like, that must do something. That's like significant.
Is Pornhub worried about ethics?
Not really. I don't think it's worried about ethics. It's a fucking adult website. It's kind of the opposite of ethical. I hope they all find it. Because I don't give a shit.
Earlier this
So basically, Arden, yeah, you started your investigation into Pornhub starting back, I think, in February. Was it February of 2023?
Yeah.
And-
We and then we started recording subjects in like June of 2023.
And I think the story is so amazing because your plan of attack was basically two-pronged. It was like basically through kind of like LinkedIn and the career path, the career way in. You're like, I think on one hand, you kind of pretended to be in the medical industry. Correct me if I'm wrong. You pretended to be involved. How did that part of it work? Because I think we all can figure out like, okay, with the logging onto a dating site, you just sort of swipe until you find somebody that looks interesting. But how did the medical part of it work?
So one of the subjects that I recorded had his own business on the side. He had started an app that helped medical professionals schedule their appointments with patients. And so I just pretended to work in the medical field. The app wasn't like out yet, so I pretended like I wanted to try it.
And would those meetings go similar to this one that we see here? Would they be kind of like dates, or would they be more like coffee meetings or interviews?
It would, like, we met for over a meal, so it probably looks like a date, even though it was initiated in a like professional way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of started at the same time that you're like, okay, now let me log on to a bunch of basically dating sites in this sort of, I guess, Montreal area. Was that your plan?
Yeah, I focused on Montreal because MindGeek, now it's called ALO, but it's the parent company of Pornhub. All right, maybe I shouldn't say that word. I'm gonna say P-Hub.
P-Hub.
YouTube.
Oh, that's fun.
And yeah, I focus on them because they have a big office there. Their headquarters are located there. And so most of their employees are concentrated in Montreal.
Are you based in Montreal as well?
I'm in the US. I'm in the States. So I was flying back and forth from here in Canada for like 4 months straight.
This is a good question. Were you wearing any kind of a disguise, or did you feel like you had to like conceal how you look in any way?
No, I pretty much wore like essentially what I would normally wear. And yeah, I didn't disguise myself whatsoever.
And okay, and so you figured, okay, I'm going to log on to a couple different dating sites. So now you have to create a dating profile, and you're not a single woman either, right? You're married, so you're creating these fake profiles. Were you worried about like what your husband might think? Because I know you mentioned in your interview with Allie that he was kind of watching over you. He was aware of the process. Even on one of these dates, he was kind of in the distance, making sure nothing funny happened.
Yeah, I mean, he's very supportive. There's no like weirdness from him about it whatsoever. He knows it's part of the job. And yeah, he's just a great guy who's along for the ride and very mission aligned when it comes to trying to end or de-incentivize these abusers from being able to monetize videos of abuse online. I think the blanket term we'd use is tech facilitated sexual exploitation. So yeah, my husband's very supportive and very aligned.
Right. And the mission here is Yeah, basically what happens when you ask the porn industry to stop and consider morality, what is right? And this is an industry that profits off of you could say weakness, one of the most interesting things I've heard you say is that male adult actors who are in this industry working they are of age, but they happen to look very young themselves. Like maybe they look like they're 15, but they're 21. Uh, you mentioned that those guys actually make the most money of anybody on
Yeah,
the site, more than
yeah,
the girls.
their videos earn the most money. They get the most clicks, the most conversion rates when it comes to advertising. I think it's Undercover video number 5. We have 7 total. Dylan Rice, who's a senior scriptwriter for ALO, explains to me that guys who look about 15 do the best. They get the most conversion rates. And because it draws a lot of pedophiles and young teens to a video, to see someone who appears to be a minor having sex with someone who is obviously an adult. And that was shocking. That was one of those things where I wasn't really expecting him to say anything like that. And there's a few moments during the undercover investigation where I was really caught off guard.
Yeah, because you would think it would be girls. You figure most people are on porn sites to watch like pretty girls. And I guess it was
Yeah.
Dylan who said that you draw in these pedos and then they can become like whales, and you're basically like, well, we know what their weakness is, we know what they're into, and we're just gonna serve them up more and more of that to keep them paying.
Yeah, and I think the concept of someone who looks underage in a video with someone who's obviously an adult, not only does it draw pedophiles who like seeing the young boy, but it draws kids who fantasize about being the young boy, which is also very disturbing, that they're not taking any effort whatsoever to keep children off of the pornographic or adult content websites. So extremely disturbing. And his personal attitude toward a 12-year-old watching explicit content is that he would encourage it, that he thinks that a 12-year-old watching trans content would help them get in touch with their sexuality, explore themselves a bit more. And I definitely was going into that meeting thinking he wouldn't say that, you know?
This is with Dylan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's so much to unpack, and your curiosity about this, the reason why you started looking into this goes back to 2020, I believe, when P-Hub started to come under fire for not age verifying the content of people that they were posting, right? And then they're
Correct.
in a couple of current lawsuits, I think.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of current litigation. Yeah, in 2020, the company went under fire for not taking down underage videos of abuse, and that these victims were writing in and saying, "Hey, this is me. Please take this down. I was, 14 when this was recorded, and I don't consent to this." And the company was just ignoring them, which is crazy. And that created a huge scandal publicly. They claim to have changed their ways and improved some processes. I do think they were forced to improve those processes, and the guidelines became more strict, but there's still a lot of room for error. There is still illegal material making its way through, and they're purposefully turning a blind eye to it because it would cut into their profits.
Right. From their opinion, it's like, why would they go out of their way to have less content and to make less money? Why would they spend more time and resources to ultimately just make less money?
Exactly. Yeah.
It kind of they turn a blind eye because they're like, well, yeah, we're not doing ourselves any favors here. And it just raises some really interesting questions about like the nature of what they do. And I go back and forth on it. Like I have some girlfriends who do OnlyFans, some girlfriends who have been in the adult industry, like are still working in it. And then some days I feel more like libertarian about it. Like, you know what, if you're two consenting
Mhm.
adults, not hurting anybody, and it's not taking a soul toll on you, and you don't feel like you wake up every day dreading going to work, then I guess that's fine for some people. And then some days I go like, oh, well, is it leading? Is it not really helping relationships? Is it kind of keeping single men from going out and meeting somebody and having a meaningful relationship? Is it something that can be a money pit for guys who just are hesitating getting out there and making themselves
Mhm.
vulnerable and trying to like meet somebody? It's and then some,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think even beyond that, because it is such a complex issue, if the viewer and the participants are all consenting adults, right? But beyond that, now that we're in a completely digital age where children have smartphones, 3-year-olds are having access to smartphones and everything, kids at school, many just have unrestricted access to the internet, which I think is insane. But we have children now viewing this type of content and not only trying to replicate acts themselves that they're seeing, but abusing other children sexually now. And I know that personally, I was exposed to adult content when I was 8 years old at a friend's house. Um, and it's something my parents would have never been okay with. I did not have a smartphone. They did everything they could to protect me from that sort of thing. And I went to a trusted friend's house, and she happened to have an older brother who was just a little bit older than us. He was still a child as well, and that's how I was exposed to adult content
So you were in
in the first
fifth
place.
grade, you said?
I was 8 years old, so I would have been in
You were
third grade.
third grade, and how old was the older brother?
He was 3 years older than me, so he would have been about 11.
Was it a video or pictures, or do you
It
remember?
was a photo.
Okay.
Um, it might have been like a Giphy kind of thing where it was moving a little bit, but it wasn't like a long video or anything. And I remember seeing it and being really disturbed, being really confused. And, but that's how it happens. You could be the best parent in the world, but your child will have to deal with the P word eventually. It's going to happen whether or not you like it, whether or not you put the filters on their phone. It's going to happen. So I think we're in a time where parents really need to be transparent and start educating their children in an age appropriate way from a young age about what can happen online.
Right, and it seems like the conversation is, if you have a boy, is like, okay, the conversation about consuming porn. If you have a little girl, the conversation is like about creating it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Making these
And
videos, it's so insane. I'm just like,
it really
as
is.
like a pregnant woman, I'm just like, "Oh god, all right, well, I have some time to have this conversation," but
Yeah.
it's really concerning.
I don't know if you ever felt this way, but growing up, I did feel pressure to not only fit the mold of one of these women that are in these types of videos, because I saw that men desired those type of women. Um, but also, I felt pressure to be okay with engaging and watching the P word, as well as just like being cool with it in general, thinking it's a good, healthy thing. I don't know if you felt that way, but there's
Of
always
course. I don't
pressure.
remember if I'm definitely, like, a bit older than you. We did not have, we did not have the P word. We didn't have, like, people weren't circulating, like, porn. It might have been, I remember, like, it went from we'd be at the summer jokingly at the pool, and we'd call, like, on the payphone, like, 1-800-HOT-TITS and listen to, like, the free whatever whatever be on the other end of the phone. It wouldn't be really anything, it'd just be, like, a breathy voice, and we would laugh and joke, and then we'd hang up and then go eat some nachos or something, and I don't remember what I saw or how old, but, like, I remember the feeling I had as a kid. It's like that hollow pit of your stomach feeling where you're like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be seeing this. Like, I don't really understand this. It's just, like, it's not on my level." You don't know
Yeah.
what to make of it, but you know that it feels wrong, and part of my, like, coping mechanism is, like, some of my earliest sexual experiences were at 14. It was like they were with older guys who were like 19, 20, whatever.
Ooh.
And it kind of like low key and I have jokes about this in my set. Like that's part of how I cope with stuff, and I make fun of it. But like for sure I was too young to be doing or
Yeah.
what I was doing or doing what I was I felt kind of like forced to do. And it's just this feeling of like you kind of want to be cool. You want to impress these older guys. You want like that. This is part of, if at the time it feels like part of being a teenager. It feels like, I guess this is what everybody's doing. I guess this is what dating is. I guess a guy was just gonna pick you up in a car and drive down the road, and then things happen. I guess that's what dating is. So, but I wish I
Yeah.
could go back to my younger self and be like, oh my God, like girl, like don't you can definitely say no. You can afford to not be cool if you have that, like, pit of your stomach feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Got into, yeah, so many situations where I felt the pressure. And as a side note, I felt the same way about strip clubs too, that there's so much pressure to be like the cool girl who will go to a strip club and have a great time, And man, it's really sad what children today are having to deal with. I can't even imagine like being
Yeah,
5 and
I'm
having a
so
smartphone and
no, I can't imagine being a preteen. I can't believe, like, being in middle school. I didn't have a cell phone till, my sophomore year of college, and even then, I really did not want one. I didn't want people doing what I was doing, and by people, I mean my parents. I'm like, I didn't wanna be able to be contacted, but I just got one because I had an internship in the city, and my mom's like, I have to know if you're being raped. You have to have a cell phone. Like, all right, that'll be my first call. Mom, you're
right.
right. So I think it was a blessing that I got through middle and high school without a cell phone, because it's a really hard thing to control, and it's just every generation has its challenges. Uh, it's conversations that they need to have with their kids, but um, it's just it's what you said. It's not just about two consenting adults creating the content. I think very few people think about who will ultimately be watching it and whose hands it could fall into. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
people tell themselves like, "Oh, well, it's not my responsibility," who ends up watching it.
right. Right. I mean, and even with the consenting adult stance, I get that. And I don't think it's realistic to say that porn could really ever be banned, especially not here in the US. Um, but I think it's fair to say that some warnings are called for when, as a viewer of porn. I think viewers should be warned. Pornography has societal and health implications, and viewers should be aware before they decide to go forward and watch. Similar to how cigarettes have changed in the public eye, I think adult content might be able to go through the same rebrand, or so to speak. I do think that's fair, because engaging in adult content in any way, I believe, is engaging in the sex trade. You are trading money or accepting payment in exchange for giving sexual pleasure. That's what it is. So I think the same restrictions surrounding, say, prostitution, we could apply some of those same restrictions to pornography.
So Right, and so, Arden, you're following in 2020, these legal cases between, Pornhub and these underage kids who basically just wanted their content to be removed, and you started to get the feeling, okay, maybe they're just saying the right things. What gave you the feeling like, I don't think they're actually changing very much over at Pornhub? Like, what made you
Yeah.
feel like you wanted to look more deeply into
Well,
it?
really, it was a friend of mine who sent me the article, was like, read this. I think they're still up to essentially the same stuff. We should do something about it. And he asked me, like, would you go undercover? And I was like, sure. So ever since then, it's been the two of us, me and Eric. He's the founder of Sound Investigations. We're a completely like self-funded project. And this was our first investigation, and we just decided to see how it goes. We didn't know if we would find anything. It was very possible that we would have spoken to these employees and everything would have been on the up and up, but many of these employees had something completely different to say.
So what were some of the most shocking things you heard, from it was mostly your dates or meetings with, you said Dylan Rice,
Yes.
and also the other guy's name was Mike
Mike
Farley, and
Farley.
that's the guy who's,
He's
in
the
this video
product
here.
manager. Yeah. The most shocking thing, and honestly the first thing that I recorded was Mike Farley telling me about this upload loophole where the content reviewers internally at the company find it absolutely impossible, because it is impossible, to match a face on an ID to a body in a video, because many
Hmm.
videos don't contain faces at all. So there's a lot of guesswork and, just push it through. It looks about right. Where really you don't know if someone's 14, 16, 20. Many times you can't tell. So when Mike Farley started talking about that loophole, I was shocked. And not only that, but the fact that he said it was enough of an issue to him that he sat down and recorded a meeting of him telling the executives about this loophole, and he was told to F off and shut up about it.
Whoa.
And
Okay, so he's
then
having a little bit of a conscience crisis here.
yeah, and well, he explained it like, if things ever hit the fan, I don't want to go down for it. So it was almost like I'm covering
He's
my
covering
own.
himself.
Yeah, but then he goes on to say, I would never be able to defend this in court. Like,
Oh.
I could be called into a deposition over this, but luckily we have corporate attorneys who coach us on what to say. Basically, they just tell you to say I don't know the entire time. And I was like, so flash forward to, like less than a month ago, Mike Farley was subpoenaed to be a witness in a new sex trafficking case out of Alabama, where victims who were underage during the time of their videos being recorded and circulated are suing ALO, the parent company of P-Hub, for sex trafficking.
Wow. So they're kind of just all admitting like, yeah, we do profit off of sex trafficking.
Yeah, yeah. I asked him if I don't want to say it on YouTube, but the R word.
Okay.
It rhymes
Okay.
with grape.
Okay.
Rapists and traffickers, do they exploit this loophole? He goes, of course, of course. And it's so matter of fact. It's like, yeah, duh. Like, why are you even asking?
And this guy, Mike, he was one of the earliest hires at P-Hub.
Mhm.
He's been there 11 years. He's probably very much able to compartmentalize his job from his conscience.
Very much. Yeah.
And like you said in a previous interview, they probably all have to watch probably a great deal of content just to do their jobs, and maybe they just go
Yeah.
on autopilot.
A lot of these tech guys do. And he explained to me, he tried to like kind of explain it to me that, oh, it's no different if I was watching videos of kittens all day. It's just constant.
Oh, really?
I
Yeah,
was
it's the
like,
exact same.
I was like, okay, cool.
Holy cow. Which, between Mike and Dylan, which one do you feel like you got the most information from?
Man, that's hard to say. Uh, they're so different because Mike revealed a lot of, the tech side of things, the content moderation side of things, and his personal attitude toward the company is that he thinks it's unethical. He doesn't believe adult content is healthy or good or studied enough, and blah blah blah. But then on the other hand, Dylan, he revealed a lot of like the marketing side of things to me, marketing gay and trans content to historically straight viewers to try to quote convert
Ooh.
them.
Really? That's fascinating. So they will try to convert straight,
Yes, yes.
heterosexual, probably mostly men, but probably some
Mhm.
women too. Convert them like, "Hey, you might like this trans content."
Yeah, so they try to inch them over and say, "Okay, well, here's some bi content. Maybe you like that. Here's some, uh, female presenting trans
Why
content."
do they do that?
So he used the term convert, I believe, in a marketing sense, and his understanding was that it makes the company more profitable off of the same person. So you're able to sell a wider range of product to the same person. So his reasoning was it's all about money. I think there could be a deeper reasoning there higher up in the company. Um, but the money reasoning is bad enough.
Okay, so it's either just about squeezing as many dollars out of one customer as possible, or it could be because I've heard a theory like the more kind of kinks you expose yourself to and watch, that it's like it becomes like it numbs out, and you just need to keep, raising the stakes on whatever kink you're watching to get that same feeling, to get the, and then you're getting to a point where like, I don't know, maybe some people feel like I've seen it all and they got to watch weirder and weirder stuff.
Yeah, I do think that's common actually. The adult industry really likes to deny that, and points to very questionable, flimsy studies um, that I've read. And the studies they cite are like, we asked 37 inmates that have all committed violent sexual crimes if uh, adult content had contributed to their actions, and they all said no. It's like, well, that's not really a study. That's
No.
just you.
Wait, is Mike wearing the same shirt in his profile as he's wearing on your date?
Yeah, I noticed that too.
What is he made the profile that morning?
I noticed that too. That's
He just
funny.
really loves that shirt.
Yeah, it's a good shirt. It's a basic
It could be
staple.
it's a classic basic. Maybe he's just like, "You know what? I found this shirt that works. I'm buying 10 copies of each
He
one."
probably has 10. Yeah.
Yeah, just a streamlined, outfit. Wow, this is so fascinating. Yes, and he brings up Jordan Peterson multiple times. So,
Mhm.
it's like he really has to have a disconnect between what he himself follows, what he himself thinks is right, and what he does for money. Because 'cause I'm sure he makes, at least 6 figures.
Yeah, I'm sure he lives very comfortably. He's been there for 11 years and was the 7th person to ever be hired.
He's so young. How old is he? He's been there
I
11
don't
years.
I don't remember actually. I think he's just in his 30s. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
He
Wow.
looks very young. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Well, okay, interesting. So they really they are kind of pushing trans content on people.
Yeah, they are. And actually, what was really interesting was Dylan said that the main audience for Trans Angels, which is one of their trans pay sites, where it's mainly female presenting trans people who are featured on the site. And he said the main audience for that is straight men.
Wow. I wonder if it's like a nature or nurture thing. like how many people are genuinely curious versus like, well, if you put it in my face enough and
Right.
it is probably like a form of kind of like trickery. Like no wonder people could, get upset and end up like
Yeah, because
be
there
questioning themselves like,
are
"Oh, am I gay?" Because it's like if you could be a beautiful looking woman, that's
totally,
actually
yeah.
a dude.
Totally, completely. And for my work, unfortunately, I have had to visit some of these sites. And looking at trans angels content, I don't suggest anyone do it, but you can take my word for it. Um, it is shocking how realistic these men can look as women. And just, seeing the waist up, I think a man would definitely believe it to be a woman.
Yeah, it's harder to go the other way though. It's harder to like get a woman to convincingly look like a dude because it's like we're just not built
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
This is so wild. Okay, so did you when you were making these dating apps, did you feel like you had to fill them out differently than you normally would to attract the kind of guys
Um,
you were looking for?
Honestly, no. I try to be as honest as possible. I think that's always better, and it's just more realistic because I think people detect BS. So I just put some photos of myself and was like, I made up a different name, but that was pretty much it.
And
Like,
and Mike Farley was actually one of the first profiles that you encountered.
yeah, it happened really early on. The first day I got on the app, the dating app, and it's just crazy how it happened because he didn't even have the company name listed anywhere on his profile. He just said that he worked in tech, and I just decided to swipe right and see what happened.
Like tech, eh?
That could mean a lot of things. Yeah.
And so, how did it work? Did he reach out to you first? Did you reach out to him first? Like, how quickly were you able to set up a date?
I think I messaged him first, and I just asked him like, "What kind of tech do you do?" or something, and he said, "Hey, I'm the product manager for Pornhub." And I
And
was
you were
like,
like, jackpot.
"What? Like this? Am I being punked?" That was
Yeah.
crazy. I don't remember how long it was from when we started talking to our first meeting, but it wasn't long. I only saw each subject a maximum of 2 times just for
Did
my safety and everything.
right. Did you try to play it like the first date you would just not ask as many questions and maybe wait for the second date for more to come out? Or did you kind of just like let them lead the way and if they wanted to vent, you let
Yeah,
them?
I like let them lead, see if they wanted to talk about work, press the buttons, see what happened. But
Wow.
most of them really wanted to talk about it, thought we're probably, excited that someone was curious about it, and I genuinely was curious.
Yeah, and they
So,
probably need to talk about it too because if you're having this, like a conscious crisis and you're not seeing a therapist or you're not like, men are not often like calling up their dude friends and having like hours long conversations, like
right.
working through something. So a lot of times an issue will be like right on the surface and you need to talk about it. Um, it is fascinating how quickly, like, this information comes out, like, it seems all like stuff if you were to hear on the job, you would need some kind of, like, NDA or, um, to sign
Yeah.
some sort of
Yeah.
agreement.
I definitely caught them off guard. I think the fact that the adult industry hasn't been investigated in this manner before, coupled with the fact that Canada hasn't really seen a ton of undercover journalism, I think it just wasn't a thought in their mind that I could be looking for information.
How did you go about, because I imagine if I was gonna set out to do this, I wouldn't know, like, what cameras to buy, I wouldn't know how to put it on my body, I wouldn't know, like, what to wear. Were you nervous the whole time? Were you worried that
I
the
was
beep thing
nervous.
would go off? Do you worry that
Yeah.
something's gonna start blinking? There's like, "Oh, change the battery pack," and you're like, "Fuck."
I was nervous. I don't think I'll ever like stop being nervous in the field. But yeah, equipment can be a pain if it's not reliable, and many times it's not, just because there's really limited options out there for cameras. But I just did my best. I hope for the best every time.
Yeah. How did you figure out like what equipment to get?
There's a bunch of online stores. You could even search on Amazon. Amazon will have some. A lot of it's not very expensive either. I think searching for like undercover camera equipment will get you there on Amazon. There's like wearable things.
Wow. I've heard a lot of people, and I see it in the chat too. People go, "Oh, these guys are going to be forever worried. They're never going to be able to go on a date again. They should always. I guess these guys just can't date." And it's like anybody who's in, I think, a position of power or doing something a little squirrely, I guess, should be worried about that now. And it's also like, hey, if you don't have anything to hide, then you have nothing to be worried about.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a someone saying they can never date. I kind of understand that, but it's also like I, as a journalist, will never cross like a physical line with a subject that I'm investigating. So there was no touching going on between me, like definitely no kissing, nothing like that. We're never in private together. We're always in a public place, only met twice. So there's a lot of ways you can make sure that the person you're seeing is actually who they say they are and not a journalist. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a flimsy argument for people to throw out there, because it's like, they weren't even dating me. Like, we each had 2 meals together. We talked, didn't touch, didn't kiss, left separately. We're never in private together. So is that considered dating?
I think so. By our grandparents' standards, for sure.
Yeah.
Did any of them try to like lean in for a kiss? Like, were you worried about like, oh, how am I going to navigate? Like, if.
Yeah, that's a concern. No, I mean, no, I was sending out cues that I didn't want to stand too close, and I think they got that.
Wow. I'm shocked these guys aren't trying to like date women in the industry.
Yeah, I don't think they really mix a lot with the actors in the industry, the adult actors, because I know that a couple of them mentioned, oh, like this P star came into the office to visit today for like a meeting, and I got to meet her, and it was like a big deal for them. So I'm assuming it's not very common that they're just like mixing with.
Maybe they just think of them as like costumed characters at Disney World. Like, wow, it's Goofy. Nice butthole. Yeah.
Right. It's kind of just looking at how men that I've observed view the actresses in the adult industry. It's kind of sad, because it's like they'll pay for their content, they'll view their content, and they seek sexual pleasure from their content. But in the real world, they kind of scoff and look down upon a girl, like taking a girl seriously in a relationship who participates in that type of content. And I think that's really hypocritical and wrong. I think that participants, actors and actresses in the adult industry get a lot of shame that the consumers don't. So
Yes.
at the very least, I think people should think about the fact that the reason why those people are in the industry and making money, and probably make a lot more money than the average person, is because us out here, millions and millions and millions of people, are paying for their content. So
that's an interesting point you bring up, and I've heard a lot of people make the same argument. Like podcasts, like the Whatever Podcast or Fresh and Fit, will have these women on who do OnlyFans, because they know what a thumbnail with pretty girls in it will do. They know that'll get clicks and eyeballs on it. They know that people ultimately like want to see like pretty girls like with their boobs out. It's just human nature. But at the same time, they'll have these women on to shame them, to make them feel bad, to degrade them, to make them feel stupid. And it's like, well, you are profiting by having them on the show, but at the same time, like you're having them on just to make them look bad.
Yeah, it's like, why not? I'm not saying like these girls are innocent. Like, no, they know exactly what they're doing, but why not have some consumers of adult content on the show? Let's find like
Right.
who are the top consumers of adult content, or just like the average Joe probably consumes a lot of that type of stuff. Why not have them on and ask them some questions, you
It
know?
would be a way more interesting conversation to listen to have guys who are like porn addicts, or even like you could say if you're a, I don't know, medium user of porn, or people who whether you're addicted or not, like talk to those guys, ask them, get into the psychology of like why they like watching it. What are they attracted to? How have their tastes developed over time? Like what content do they go for now versus at the beginning? And
Yeah. Yeah,
that yeah, that point about like pushing trans content on straight people is so fascinating. And I wonder if the same thing happens. Like, do you get the sense that they're also pushing like, because some, like, let's assume like teenagers are on the site, right? And maybe they have a job or something, and they are it's possible that like teenagers are paying to watch this content too. It's like, did you get into that at all? Like, are they pushing this uh or what content are they pushing on like teenage boys basically?
I don't know specifically. All I know from my undercover meetings is that Dylan said that young teens are a big audience for those videos where the boy seems to be in his teens, about 15. And also another subject did tell me, and it's not news to anyone, but the incest category, the step family category, is huge right now, and it's had a huge push in recent years. And I think I've heard from people who are consumers of adult content saying, yeah, this shows up a lot in the feed, in the suggested feed or the home page, and it's just one of those categories that for whatever reason has exploded. And a subject of mine even said, I think this is actually a genuine problem that could lead to someone acting this out in real life and violating a family member in some way. And that's very disturbing. They say, oh, well, this is step family. But, it's really popular, and this is really messed up, but it's a popular scenario in adult videos now for, say, a mother and her daughter to be engaged in a sex act with the stepbrother or something. So really they're saying, oh, well, it's step family. Well, you actually do have people portraying real family members by blood in the video.
Yeah.
It's so messed up.
And how do you truly know if it's like nature versus nurture? People are genuinely curious about this niche, this porn niche, or right, it's they're at the point where, well, I've seen everything else and this is the most
Right.
taboo subject du jour, or it's like because there is so much of this like step content available, are they sort of teaching a generation of men and women to go for this? Are they how much is porn shaping people's sexual appetites?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say in the nature versus nurture argument that both can apply, just depending on the person. And some people may be predispositioned a certain way, and some people might be a little more suggestible. And we're all different, you know what I mean? I know that I've developed like fascinations with things, and I wouldn't have otherwise, not in a sexual way, just in like general fascinations with things that I would never have gotten into if they hadn't been in my environment. So
Of course. Yeah, and it's I kind of am interested in talking about these subjects because I like getting into like the psychological aspect of it, of what makes people into the things they're into, and why is it based on early experiences. And this is to your point earlier that we see these behaviors reflected in the
Yeah.
real world. This is just this month out of the Daily Mail. British children commit 18 R words a day. Shock. Official figures reveal 15,000 R words and attacks by under 18s in 2022, with access to violent online porn blamed for normalizing criminal behavior. Like these are startling statistics.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like, I wasn't surprised when I read that. I'm glad that it's being talked about. But even years and years ago, growing up, I saw a lot of disturbing sexual behavior from other kids. Definitely. I don't think I would have been exposed to really any of the inappropriate content I learned about as a child if it wasn't for other kids, because I was around them the most. So, yeah.
And these are just, offenses by child perpetrators aged 10 to 17 in 2022. Same thing. Indecent imagery, SA on a child, R word of a child, sexual activity involving. It's like it's a lot. There's no way that this stuff is not shaping these young minds and these young kids. It's really concerning. It really makes you think about just you don't know whose hands this is going to end up in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like handing your child a smartphone is like giving them a weapon. It's very dangerous, and we warn our kids about physical dangers all the time, but technology has just gotten so far ahead of what most people could be prepared for. So I think it's time we really start learning about all the dangers of the online world, especially for children.
And says here the youngest offender reported to police in that 12-month period was a 4-year-old child who uploaded an indecent image of a sibling. And this is why I don't understand. Like you see so many people on the left being like, "Oh, well, it's not. We're not grooming. They're just books. It's just books that we're making available to kids in school." It's like you add that with this. It's like clearly these kids are at the most suggestible they're ever going to be in their lives, and a 4-year-old doing this has no idea what they're doing. It's just monkey see, monkey do. And
Yeah. Children cannot consent to viewing or learning or participating in these types of acts. It's just a fact. And I can't believe the kind of stuff going on in schools now. I can't believe it. It's
and part of this article, they're saying they're insisting that police do not want to criminalize a generation of young people, adding officers will not necessarily take action if an underage girl shares an indecent image with her boyfriend. That is a bit of a gray area, but it's also just another main reason why kids should not be having smartphones, period.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's how a lot of underage content gets on a huge site like P-Hub. And now we have an emergence of just like an increase of what's called sextortion happening to kids, where a trafficker will contact a child digitally and threaten
Through
them.
video games, through the
Yeah.
chat rooms of video games that kids all play.
Yeah, exactly. It's unfortunately very common.
Wow. It is scary, but better to know about this stuff than have your head in the sand.
Mhm.
And you have a kind of an interesting approach to this all, because you said that your kind of acting abilities helped you on these dates, and it helped you kind of keep up appearances, and because you come from Hollywood. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what made you kind of go in? Were you like a child actor, or like how did you get into the
Yeah.
industry?
Yeah, I got into the industry when I was like 12. I really started working in TV and film when I was 15 or 16, and I stayed in until my early 20s. But I trained as an actor, and that's helped me, I think, in undercover work, not even from like an acting skill set standpoint, because it really doesn't take that much of an acting skill set to do undercover work. But really in like a courage standpoint, it's helped me because as a kid, I was having to stand up in front of a room full of adults and act out a scene. And that can be really intimidating and scary. So I got used to doing things like that. And I think that's helped me a lot, like keep composure when I'm in the field in front of a subject.
So you got into the industry when you were 12, you said. What were your roles like? Like, what kind of jobs did you get?
Yeah, I worked a lot on ABC Family shows. I did Modern Family, I did Blackish, Fresh Off the Boat, The Fosters, a lot of that kind of stuff. I did do a Disney show, some like teen and children's show. I did like NCIS LA, just kind of like the typical network TV shows. And it was fun. Like I had a good time for a lot of my experience, but there came a point when it was just time to go.
Is this true? You beat up the redheaded boy in Modern Family?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a scene where I'm like stuffing dirt in his face.
Ginger side, I see. Okay.
And that was really fun.
What were some of the, I guess, worst things you saw or shocking things you saw, like, while working in Hollywood?
Yeah, a lot of inappropriate things. So as far as my experiences go, like when I was 13, I was in an acting class and the teacher made me and another 13-year-old girl make out with each other a bunch of times
Oh
for
god.
a
I
scene.
remember this story. Yeah,
Yeah,
multiple takes. Like,
like
what
a
did you say?
lot
Like
over the course
30
of
or
weeks.
something?
Yeah. Um, and then later he did contact me for sex when I was like 15 or 16. So really creepy stuff, lots of creepy stuff like that. I was like molested by a photographer who had known me since I was 15. Super, super
Oh
messed up.
god. How old were
Uh,
you when that
I
happened?
was 20. So I was an adult, but
Still. Yeah.
yeah, I was mentally a kid. I felt like, uh lots of messed up stuff, like hyper sexualization of everyone, including children. I had a friend who was 14 years old who was kissed on the mouth by a man in his 40s during a photo shoot.
What was the context for that? Like,
He was
how
the
did that
photographer, and he in between shots he came up to her and kissed her on the mouth, and
just out of nowhere? Just
yeah,
like,
he started
"Hey."
taking more photos of her, and he said, "Yeah, that's the look I wanted." So in his mind, or his outward explanation for it was like, "I wanted to shock you,
Oh,
and
so he's
I
trying to
wanted
get
that look."
a reaction out of her to make a certain face. So that's how he justifies kissing her. Ugh. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So many messed up things, like just in acting classes, having to act out scenes that were way adult, things that kids should not experience during childhood. We would have to be acting them out in scenes, and I was even told by acting coaches like, hey, you're just too innocent for this scene, like you're not really doing it right, so you might need to go out and gain some real world experience and then come back and try it again.
At how
And
old
so
were you told this?
all throughout my
From,
childhood,
from
like,
basically 11 to
I mean,
maybe.
yeah, the times that I distinctly remember being told that by someone, I was like 15, 16, and 17, and it was just like, now looking back and realizing I was so guilted into thinking like I'm not a good enough actor. I'm not like mature enough, whatever. I don't understand things. Looking back and realizing like it was because I shouldn't, not because it was my fault. And the fact that I went out and tried to do things I wasn't comfortable with based on what an acting teacher had told me is like, it just makes me cringe. It makes me so sad for my younger self, you know?
Yeah, I feel that way too when I look back at like things that happened to me when I was younger. Why do you think the industry is that way? Because the competitive nature of Hollywood or the biz, just like, well, you're replaceable. Well, there's 20 other people waiting to take your spot, so you better do
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
There's just this whole attitude, like this unified attitude in the industry where it's like the more messed up uh like the thing you're doing in a scene, the more messed up it is, the more raw and amazing and Oscar worthy, and that's real acting. The more messed up it is. And then the more wholesome something is, they're like, "Oh, that's cute. Have fun
Like
on
it's
Hallmark."
easier or something, like it's less of an acting challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when it comes down to it, it's an industry for adults. It caters to adults. It's full of adults. Uh, and if you're a kid in it, you're around adults all the time. So you are going to become an adult a lot quicker than your average kid. So
And you're working almost adult hours.
adult hours, I became legally 18 when I was 15 so that they wouldn't have to hire an on-set teacher for me when I was working, and it made me more hireable. Um, and I don't think that like damaged me at all, but it's just a comment on the culture of like the more mature adult you can prove yourself to be, the more they're going to hire you.
Did your parents kind of help you? Were they kind of like stage parents? Did they help you get into the industry? Did you kind of lead the way on wanting to get into the business? And did
I
they have any
begged my parents to let me get into the industry. I had done some like modeling print work before, and I was like, I just really want to be an actor now. I want to take classes. I don't necessarily think I wanted to do it for the right reasons. I think I just thought it was fun, and I wanted to be on screen, and I wanted to see myself on TV. But I begged and begged, and eventually my mom and my dad let me do it. But my mom like took me to classes, and she was very protective of me. And I think in a lot of these situations that I got into, my mom was very manipulated as well and gaslit to think, well, all these parents sitting next to me are trusting their kids in that room with that teacher. Why would I question that?
Mhm.
But she didn't realize that this teacher was more than comfortable being inappropriate in front of a room full of kids, and it was just us kids and him.
What was the process like? It started with classes, or did you have to look for management when you were first
I
getting into
started
it?
with classes, and then after I'd been in class for a while, I got a manager, got my agent, did my headshot photos, and that was my process. Sometimes people do it in reverse, but my mom said I had to be in classes before I really got serious.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So your mom was a little bit more. She was, yeah, even though she was protective of you, the whole system kind of gaslights and pressures
Yeah,
you
and
into
I think there's only so much you can do because at the end of the day, like, someone targeting your child is a a successful predator is going to befriend the parent. They're gonna be really nice to the parent. They know exactly what to say. And I think in a lot of these situations, my mom was totally thrown for a loop, and she looks back and she's shocked now, and I think she feels really bad. But I tell her like we were both fooled, and now we know, and it could have been so much worse for me. I was one of the lucky ones. And I learned a lot while I was acting, so I don't regret it.
the story of you having to do like all those takes of you as an underage girl, like kissing that other underage girl. Would you say that's probably the worst experience that you had?
As a child, Yeah, probably the most like humiliating and confusing because that's what I was taught that boys wanted to see. They wanted to see me do stuff with other girls. And that was one of my earliest experiences
What was your
ever in that way.
parents' reaction to, like, when did they finally found out about that?
Pretty recently. And yeah, I think they're really sad, and I don't want them to feel guilty or anything because the nature of the industry is just so tricky, and I purposefully didn't tell my parents the things that happened to me because I knew what they would say. They would say, "Okay, well, you're done then."
Yeah.
And I was clinging on to acting for so long.
Ugh, yeah, because you're like, "Well, I don't want this is, like, fun, right? This is
Yeah,
what
like,
you have
this
to
is my
do to stay in
dream.
it." Yeah,
Yeah.
and you don't think there's any way to get through this process without doing these things, and you don't know that they're wrong because 'cause you're a
Exactly, and I
kid.
was told that if I didn't do these things, if I wasn't willing to do these things, I was told to embrace my inner pervert by, a 40, 50-year-old acting coach man, and that he was like, "I'm one of the most perverted people I know, and you need to embrace your inner pervert and be okay with that."
Oh
And
my god.
I was so brainwashed that I was brainwashed to think, "Yeah, this is real acting," like, embracing that kinda stuff and portraying that kinda stuff in a scene,
Yeah,
that's like
they
real
convince you that ignoring boundaries equals
yeah.
talent.
Exactly, and they say like, "Okay, well, you're not really doing this. I could tell you're uncomfortable, so you're not uninhibited enough. You really need to free yourself, so you're gonna do some more of these exercises." It's like,
So it's like the kids that get through and become the most successful are the ones that are able to be convinced to cross
do
boundaries,
anything.
ignore their gut. Maybe they have absent parents, or maybe their parents are the ones that are also charmed as well. And yeah,
Yeah.
parents maybe want their kids to live vicariously. They want them to get super famous because they feel good about themselves because of that. And then you look at like all the child actors and you're like, wow, the kids that make it through and get really famous, what have they been made to do?
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents who, I don't know if they're bad people. I think they just might be a little blind to the fact that just because your child is doing something for a scene doesn't make it fake. I
Mm.
think they use that excuse and justification like, "Oh, well, it's in a scene." Like she's doing that for a scene. It's like, well, she's also still doing it. Like we see
Right,
that
just like an adult doing a sex scene, you're
yeah.
still doing it. You're
Yeah, and
still
it's
making
like
it
in
for
the movie Cuties, um the entertainment industry, Hollywood, was justifying it, saying, "Well, you need to watch the entire story. Like, you're just seeing clips of girls doing things. The whole moral of the story is blah 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 blah." And it's like, well, yeah, but the girls are still being sexualized on screen. They're still doing those acts. You do realize, like, just because there's like an overarching moral of the story doesn't mean like you're not doing those acts. That's still
And I think your developing child brain cannot tell it's still gonna log that as part of your childhood lived experiences. I don't
yeah,
think you're in
and
your
you
memory
get
like, "Well, that was acting and this was in
right,
real
you
life."
get praise for the things you do on screen or in a scene. And I think as a kid it can be really confusing because you learn like, oh, when I act a certain way, when I'm this character, people pay attention to me. And I think that was also very confusing to me that when I acted in a more like sexual way, I got a more favorable response from the people around me. So I think I developed a certain persona I would put on even in real life.
Of course, because as a kid, it's a survival mechanism. You're trying to please the adults around you. That includes your parents, that includes these, coaches and photographers, because it's just part of, like, I have to make it through the day, make sure I, get enough attention, feel validated, feel safe and secure in my world. And maybe part of it is, oh, I'm helping mom and dad make a living. I'm contributing to the family financially. There are some situations where like as the parents are like, you're our only help, like get in there. Wow. That's a lot for kids, and it's just it really makes sense for why so many child stars end up kind of just messed up and have a lot of shit to
Yeah.
work out in their adult years.
Yeah, there's just no foundation. It's just all like, and I'm generalizing. I'm sure there's exceptions, but what I saw was everyone around me, their entire world was acting and doing whatever it took to be better, to work more. And it didn't matter what it was. So that was the life I was living. There was really no like foundational beliefs that anyone really had other than we embrace all the dark feelings that we have and we let them out in acting class. And you need to magnify all your anger and all your shame. What are you most ashamed of? Tell the whole class right now.
Scientology, yeah.
Yeah, no, it really
Really?
like
You're made to tell the
mhm.
whole class what you're most ashamed of, so now everybody knows about the time you pooped your pants in
Like,
math or something.
yeah, I mean, they purposefully will humiliate you in these acting classes to try to free your mind and free your inhibitions. And some of these acting classes are like hardcore, you know what I
Right, to
mean?
get you comfortable with, like, being humiliated, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, once we kinda numb away this feeling of like, "Oh god, I'm ashamed," or like, "Oh, I don't feel comfortable doing this," like, once that goes away, then you can do whatever.
Yeah. So I just think as a whole, the entire Hollywood system is just trash,
Yeah, it
to
definitely sounds
summarize.
like it. So what made you stop?
A lot of things kind of happening at once. I think maturing as a person and realizing that the world did not, in fact, revolve around me. There were bigger issues in the world other than my acting career. And I wanted to do something. I wanted to feel like I was contributing to a greater good rather than just Arden's prancing around on screen today. Everyone look at her. So I think that was a big factor. And also, I started to have and develop some opinions that were very you know, contrary to what the rest of Hollywood believed. And I was questioning things that we were told we should never question. If you even question that, and then you're a horrible racist person or whatever. So I also realized if I stayed in Hollywood, if I obtained the success that I was hoping for, I would never be able to be myself. I would
Mm.
be in a constant state of hiding and lying and pretending to be someone I wasn't. And I just wasn't willing to do that. So,
What are some of the ideas, like, do you mean ideas around, like, diversity or, like, the DEI stuff?
yeah, I mean, there was a time when if you didn't post the black square, then like you weren't an ally
Yep,
and you were a horrible person. And
you gotta fall in line with all the
even if
trends.
you posted the black square, but you didn't have a caption, you didn't like cite a resource in the caption, then you weren't really an ally. You're just
If
taking
you're
part
not
in the.
seen reading White Fragility.
Yeah, and it's like, well, why do I have to do that? So I was like, you know what? This isn't going to change. There's just going to always be the next thing that if I don't jump on and I don't say the right thing in the same rehearsed, disingenuous, stupid way, then people are going to come after me and I'm going to lose work. How is this ever going to be
Yeah,
sustainable?
it seems like the hoops never end, and then you look at someone like Gina Carano, same thing, like, it
Yeah.
started with her not posting the black square, and then just saying very kind of middle of the road takes, like, being a conservative is you're attacked the same way, like, Jews were in the Holocaust or whatever she said, and she could like, lost her job for it, fired from
Yeah.
Lucasfilm.
And the roles as I got older, as I started to being asked to audition for, just got darker and darker. There was a lot of like witchcraft, spirituality, demon kind of conjuring type roles where this, sexual girl is some witch who's like conjuring demons and she'll seduce someone and take their soul and like just stuff like that where I
Wow.
was like, yeah, I'm not comfortable doing this. I think I got away with going on a lot of and being okay with a lot of the auditions when I was younger just because the content tended to be a little bit more innocent. Um, I was on a Disney show and that was completely fine. I didn't have issues with any of that. But yeah, as I got older, I started going out for things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Lucifer and things like that, where I started to really get a pit in my stomach when I would audition for those things.
Wow.
And one day I drew a line and I set my boundaries with my agent, and it was a very short time after that they just dropped me.
Wow. Because do you think they saw you as difficult after
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I think so.
Would you look at the lines that you'd have to rehearse and like the feeling would start to set in? Like, I mean, and you probably did a couple of these auditions before you realized, like, yeah, this really just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it was it didn't feel good. There was even one where I actually had to take Xanax to be able to get through it.
Because you're that nervous
Because
going into it.
I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, it was so unnecessarily sexual and like
Wow.
dark and just that dark spiritual theme throughout it. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna get through this unless I take a Xanax.
And it's like, of all the scenes they could have you rehearse and audition, it's like they pick something dark and sexual. It's almost like, yeah, we wanna see right
Yeah.
away if you have what it takes.
Yeah, it was weird. There was a time span where it was almost exclusively like, "Oh, you're this supernatural chick who does this," and it's like, why is everything supernatural right now? I don't like, I'm not comfortable with a lot of these themes, you know? It's not like I'm a fairy princess. It's not what you're asking me to do.
Wow, Lisa says, "My little sister was watching that show, and I was uncomfortable watching the show, and I'm the edgy person."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't really watch, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but it was a show that, like, a lot of kids I knew, like, growing up, like, just loved. It was like a cult classic, and I just was like, "Mm, alright." I didn't
Yeah,
realize
I
it was so
never
dark.
got into it. Yeah, I never got into it, but I definitely auditioned for it multiple times, and each time I just uh, I it was hard to explain, it just felt wrong. I wasn't comfortable with it, and, I'm in retrospect, I'm glad that those types of roles didn't work out for me.
Well, it's good that you hadn't numbed your gut feelings to an extent where you could completely ignore them and, like, that you were able to pull yourself out of that. Were you raised, religious at all growing up?
I was raised going to church. I wouldn't say that our household was, like, super strict in a religious way, but I was not a religious person growing up, but I did go to church, and I kinda had that foundational understanding, awareness of God, a higher power, and through my teens and early 20s kind of flip-flopped into, like, a new age belief system.
Wow. Were you telling your parents about these auditions like, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this because of the content?"
Yeah, I would tell my mom mainly, like, and she would agree with me. She'd be like, "Yeah, then don't do it." There was a lot of stuff I turned down, especially, the show Lucifer. There was never a point when I was like, "I'm okay with this."
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar, but, like, the whole
I
concept.
think, is Mark Pellegrino a lead on that
I
show?
I actually don't know the actors'
He's like a
names.
blonde guy. He's, I think, from Lost.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, essentially, they're portraying Lucifer, Satan. He's like come down to earth, and uh, they portray him as like a really likable
He's
character
just like
who's
us.
actually like
Yeah.
a good guy. And I just was never comfortable.
Yeah, how in your face do you have to get? Okay, so yeah, starring Tom Ellis, Lauren German, Kevin Alejandro. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, Satan, he's so accessible. Lucifer, whatever. Same shit.
Yeah.
This could have been you, Arden. You could have been on here if you didn't have your pesky gut
Moral
reaction.
compass. Yeah.
Your pesky moral comforts. But is it worth it? No, not ultimately.
Yeah, and I can't explain like why I was uncomfortable because I really wasn't practicing any, Christianity at the time, but it was just something in me that was like, yeah, this I can't do this and feel good about myself.
No, good for you. I'm so glad you pulled yourself out of that mess, and I feel like, like, it's horrible you had to go through those experiences as a child, but you can see why that fueled you to pursue your, undercover investigations into P-Hub and to help, unearth the truths about what this company is doing and their lack of concern for kids and sex trafficking and
Thank you.
really just they just care
Yeah.
about money and like you're I really think that's why you're here is to kind of like you've had these experiences and so you can do this work and show the world what's really going on because I just this would be so easy for people to be like, "Oh, they, Pornhub, they go through the motions, they make the changes, I guess they're better," and then people forget about this shit, but the
Yeah.
footage you got is, like, really, hard to ignore, and I just think it's very cool that you were able to get that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We'll continue to push for change and real accountability. There's lawsuits right now that have our videos cited as evidence, so hopefully it helps survivors get the justice that they deserve. And there is a criminal case going on against the parent company of P-Hub, and they have admitted to profiting off of sex trafficking. So they got a sweetheart deal, unfortunately, with the Eastern District of New York, a little slap on the wrist. But we're going to work to make sure that more criminal charges are going to come into play.
That's fantastic. We got a couple of questions from the audience. Push-Up says, "Did Layla Mickleweight reach out to you at all?" I don't know who that is.
I have talked to Lila. Yeah, she's great. She has the campaign #trafficking hub. She goes really, really hard against P-Hub and exposes all of their illegal practices. She really digs into the evidence behind all the lawsuits, and she's incredible. She does great work.
Oh, wow, cool, thank you. Jake Hudson, hello, and from Mark Sart, oh, good afternoon, Chrissy, Arden, Frank, Baby, Muffin, and Waffles, those are the dogs. I hope you are all enjoying the new year so far. What do you both think of the head of United being a drag queen? Oh my gosh, this just came out. I can't even believe it. I'm gonna pull this up really quick.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
want to
this
see it
insane
actually.
footage of revealed United CEO Scott Kirby is a drag queen, pushes drag. Oh my God, pushes drag and DEI on staff. Why do we keep, and I fly United like pretty regularly.
Yeah, so do I.
Oh boy.
It's like unavoidable at this point. Airlines are so like you only have a few options and none of them are great.
Holy cow. The United Scott Kirby, who went viral for championing DEI measures for pilots at the company, is also a drag queen in his spare time. In photos revealed by Libs of TikTok, Kirby is seen dressing in drag in other events sponsored by the company and had queens attending.
At least he's not a teacher.
I know that's in 2024. We're like, well, okay. Like dress in
At
drag.
least he doesn't teach kindergarten.
It's just so bold, like, just doesn't
It's
care,
bold,
just
yeah.
very much confident doing this. Holy cow. It's like, dude, don't you have any fucking dignity? CEO of United laments
Too
that
many
he
white males in the airline industry. Is he
Yeah,
a white male? Do I have that?
I believe so.
So is he gonna step down?
Well,
and
if
let
you're a
someone
white
else.
male and you're a drag queen, I guess that's how you get around it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
he
got it,
said
got it.
there's too many white males in the airline industry. Maybe being a drag queen is just he's doing this to keep his job, really. He's gotta gay it up a little bit, so he's
That's
just not like
true, yeah, we have to think about all the possibilities here. He could be playing chess. Everyone here is
right.
playing checkers, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, "Look, I'll buy some costumes and makeup, whatever I gotta do to keep my CEO job. I can't go down just a boring white cis male here."
At least he's committed to his job.
Wow. They have committed that 50% of the classes will be people of color. Today, only 19% of our pilots at United are women or people of color. And by the way, from all the data I've seen, that's the highest of any airline in the country. Who freaking cares? When pressed for
Yeah.
why there were not enough women and people of color in the C-suite by Axios interviewer, Kirby shrugged off the comment. Right. Don't ask me about the C-level
Yeah.
executives. He then went on to explain how the company requires women and people of color to be engaged in the hiring and interview. Well, that's what it's all about. Mostly the C-level guys are still all old white men, but it's the next level down and the managerial and hire people hiring, people doing HR that are all
Yeah.
they can put all the pack in all the diversity
Yeah,
there.
and I've seen the pain in a man's face, a white man capable at his job who was passed up for that promotion because they had to meet some race or diversity quota. There's pain in their faces. I mean, this is real discrimination. It's crazy what is happening and what people are just okay with and celebrating. It's really disgusting to me.
Yeah. Meet Maya Tallman, a man pretending to be a woman who's pilot and runs a newly formed DEI committee for United. He sent a letter to employees about how excited he is to incorporate DEI into United. Pray United is focused on safety just as much as they're focused on diversity. Yikes and gross. In a letter sent to employees about DEI, Tallman explained the committee would be going by DEIB instead of DEI because the B stands for belonging. Oh, give me a break.
Hmm.
Who freaking cares?
Dibe.
Dive. You're good. I'm going to dive in a plane crash if my pilot is trans. Okay. One drag queen.
Oh man.
Yikes. Okay. Yeah, this is what's gonna happen. People
I'm
out to
like, if
spineless.
really they're willing to pass up the strict criteria you have to meet as an airline pilot, like I would seriously consider to just not fly because that is
Maybe that's what they want. I think
frightening.
they want to dissuade people from flying. And
I'm
plus
dissuaded.
plus once they get in all the electric cars that they can remote start and stop, I think they just want to control people's freedom of movement and autonomy. I really think that's what it's they get to have like the DEI points all the while they are achieving their goal of uh keeping people from traveling. But I'm just a conspiracy theorist. Um, Soren Mask, Arden, you're proof that chastity will always win against lust. Hope you keep doing what you're doing. Deuce
Thank
vault.
you. I know you, Soren Mass. Thank you for following me. I always enjoy your comments.
Thank you, Soren. Planet Nut, the Kirby drag queen story has been known internally for years. If you want to reach out to a group called Airline Employees for Health Freedom, they could tell you about a current vax mandate case currently ongoing. Oh, that sounds interesting.
Mm,
Thank you, Planet Nut. I feel like that's where we're living on Planet Nut right now.
for real.
Arden, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and everything
Thank you,
it
Chrissy.
can't be easy to talk about all this stuff, and a lot of it gets into like, yeah, it's tricky to talk about like when you were a kid and like these vulnerable times.
Yeah. It's weird because like you grow up thinking like it's not significant whatsoever, but then you look back, you're like, wait, that was weird, you know?
And you feel bad for like little you. You wish you could go back, but that's part of why we talk
Yeah.
about these things now, so that parents can have these conversations. And uh when it comes to this stuff, there's no such thing as being too much of a helicopter parent or being like too hovering or too controlling. It's like this
Yeah.
is the thing this is the hill to die on.
Yeah, I have a completely different view on parenting now. Mad respect.
So Arden, what are you working on now? Where can people follow you other than on Twitter at Arden_young_?
Yeah, we're gonna continue to investigate online sexual exploitation issues. We may even stay within the adult industry. And Twitter is where I'm most active, but I'm also, you can find me on Instagram. I'm trying to do the reels there. And I'm Arden_young_.
Awesome. Everyone go follow her now. And yeah, I'll link the page to if you want to donate, throw some coins to Sound Investigations. I will link the donate link in the description here if you like what
Thank
they
you.
do and want to see more. And follow Arden and follow me if you're not. No, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Arden, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to the
Thank you.
chat.
Chrissie.
You guys had good questions. And yeah, we will see everybody next time. Bye.